I have a confession to make. I started my morning today with the absolute best of intentions.
Oh boy.
I sat down, coffee in hand, ready to be, the most informed person in the room, opened a browser to check the markets. Then I saw a headline about a new policy update, clicked on that.
Mm-hmm.
Then I saw a link to this really long, really thoughtful essay on the future of the economy.
Mm-mm.
I clicked that too, thinking, okay, I'll read this in a second.
Right.
Fast forward maybe 20 minutes, I have 45 tabs open.
The famous tab explosion.
It's a disaster.
Yeah.
It really is. I've got 3 breaking news stories where I've only read the first sentence. A recipe for lasagna I will never, ever bake.
Mm.
And that 5,000-word essay is just staring at me,
Yeah.
mocking me.
Yeah.
And I just get this creeping anxiety that I'm technically connected, but I'm absolutely not informed.
That is the defining paradox of the modern web, isn't it? We have access to infinite knowledge, but we're all operating with very finite bandwidth. It's not an information gap anymore.
Bro.
It's an attention gap. You're drowning in data, but you're starving for actual wisdom.
Drowning in data, starving for wisdom. Wow. Yeah, that hits a little too close to home.
Yeah.
But that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at a tool that claims to be the life raft in that ocean of data.
Mm.
We're digging into the Mpelembe Insights AI article analyzer.
And I think it's important to ground us in the specific context here. We're looking at source material from late January 2026.
Right.
So this isn't the early days of AI where a summarizer just, randomly deleted every other sentence and hoped for the best. This is positioned as a specialized digital utility.
I highlighted that exact phrase in my notes. Specialized digital utility.
Sounds so utilitarian, almost heavy duty. But the tagline is what really got me.
What was it?
Intelligence for web content. That's a pretty big promise. It suggests it doesn't just shorten the text, it actually makes the content smarter. Or, I don't know, maybe it makes us smarter about the content. I think that's the goal. The mission statement here is about efficiency, absolutely, but it's also about comprehension. It's designed to transform what the source calls lengthy content into concise data points.
Okay.
And for you, the listener, if you're trying to stay on top of your field without reading 6 hours a day, that distinction data points versus just text, that's crucial.
So today we're going to see if this tool is the shortcut we've all been waiting for. Is this the thing that finally lets us be well-informed without the burnout? Or is it just another layer of tech we have to manage?
It's a bit of both, honestly, but the potential here is significant.
All right, let's get into the gears of this thing. If I'm a user and I copy a link or paste some text into this Mpelembe tool, what's actually happening? Because if I just get a paragraph that says, this article is about the economy, well, I can figure that out from the headline.
Right, you don't need an AI for that.
Exactly.
No, it's significantly more robust. The source outlines three primary pillars of output. The first one is what you'd expect, instant summarization.
The efficiency play.
Exactly. It takes complex, long-form, content think-dense academic papers, sprawling investigative journalism, and it just distills it down to the gist.
Okay, so that's the save me time feature, the executive summary.
Precisely. It gives you the narrative arc.
Yeah.
But the second feature is where we start getting into that intelligence aspect we mentioned.
Key takeaways.
Right.
The key takeaway.
I want to push back on that for a second. How is a key takeaway practically different from a summary? Aren't they basically the same thing, just formatted differently?
That's a great question. And no, not in the context of, data science and analysis.
Yeah.
Think of a summary as a narrative. It tells you the story of the article in fewer words.
Yeah.
It flows.
Okay.
Key takeaways are structural. The tool is identifying core concepts, essential information, and main arguments. It's extracting the data points you need to retain, but stripped of all the narrative fluff.
So, if the summary is the movie trailer that gives me the vibe and the basic setup, the key takeaways are the bullet points that tell me exactly how the movie ends and who the killer was. That is a fair analogy, yeah. And if we look at the technical side of this, based on the source, this functionality likely relies heavily on a specific subset of natural language processing called named entity recognition.
NER.
NER.
Okay, let's pause on that. NER. I see this acronym pop up in tech blogs all the time, but break it down for the person who just wants to read the news. What is the AI actually doing when it performs named entity recognition?
Okay, so Imagine you're reading a complex geopolitical article. To you, the United Nations is an organization. Geneva is a place. January 2026 is a date.
Right.
To a basic computer, those are just strings of characters. They're no different than the word the or cat.
It's just code. Just
Yeah.
letters.
Exactly. NER is the process where the AI has been trained to categorize those words. It can identify the who people, organizations, the where locations, and the when, so time frames. It separates these specific entities from all the descriptive text around them.
But why does that matter for the summary? Why do I care if the computer knows that Geneva is a city?
Because it anchors the abstract arguments to concrete facts. When the tool highlights essential information, it's often pulling out these named entities. So instead of a vague summary saying, officials met to discuss the treaty,
Right.
NER allows the tool to pinpoint, representatives from the EU and Mercosur met in Brussels on Tuesday. It adds specificity.
That is actually huge because so many times I'll read an article and I'll get the vibe, but I forget the specific details almost immediately, like who actually said the quote or what the deadlines for the new regulation was.
Exactly, and this connects directly to that aha moment you're always looking for as a learner. Instead of hunting through 3,000 words to find the thesis statement or the key evidence,
Yeah.
the tool just presents those structural elements immediately. It's handing you the skeleton of the argument so you can decide if you need to look at the rest of the body.
It's almost like having a research assistant who highlights the document before you even see it.
That is the ideal use case, yes.
Okay, so we've got the summary, we've got the hard facts through NER, but then there's this third feature, and honestly, this feels like the part where we really step into the future.
The sentiment scores.
Sentiment scores.
This is the emotional layer, and frankly, this is where the tool shifts from being a simple time saver to being a genuine critical thinking aid.
Explain this to me, because when I hear sentiment score, I'm imagining a robot trying to understand poetry. How does a piece of software give a news article a score based on feelings?
It's less about feeling in the human sense and more about vocabulary analysis. The analyzer evaluates the emotional tone of the piece by scanning for specific types of adjectives, adverbs, and phrasing. It builds an emotional profile to tell you if the news is being framed in a positive, a negative, or a neutral light.
So it isn't just telling me what happened, it's telling me how the author feels about what happened.
Or, and this is more important, how the author wants you to feel. The source explicitly mentions this is useful for detecting editorial stance or media bias.
That is powerful. But is it reliable? I mean, sarcasm is hard enough for humans to detect in text. Can an AI really tell the difference between a devastating critique and, constructive criticism?
And that's the million-dollar question in NLP. In 2026, these models are incredibly sophisticated at context. They aren't just counting happy words versus sad words. They look at syntax, at framing.
So an example.
Sure. If an article describes a stock market drop as a catastrophic crash, that triggers a negative sentiment score. If another article describes the exact same drop as a healthy correction, that might score as neutral or even slightly positive.
I could see a really cool use case here for media literacy. Let's say there's a big controversial news event.
Right.
You could take an article from news outlet A and an article from news outlet B, run them both through this Mpelembe tool, and just compare the sentiment scores.
Exactly. You're performing a comparative analysis of emotional delivery. The facts might be identical in both articles. Unemployment is up by 2%, let's say, but one article scores as neutral while the other scores as highly negative. That discrepancy tells you everything you need to know about the editorial angle.
It's like a lie detector, but for spin.
It aligns perfectly with the value of critical thinking. It forces you to look beyond the what and question the how. It turns you, the listener, from a passive consumer of news into an active analyst.
I love that. But I want to play devil's advocate for a second. Isn't there a risk that we start relying on the score too much? Like if I see a negative score, I just assume the article is trash without even reading it.
We'll get to the psychological risks in a bit because that's a very real danger. But strictly from a utility standpoint, knowing the bias before you read is generally considered an advantage. It lets you put your guard up.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's ground this a bit. We've talked about the magic, now let's talk about the machine. How do we actually use this thing? Is it easy? Do I need a degree in prompt engineering to get these insights?
The workflow is described as very streamlined, but there are some nuances, and frankly, some friction points we need to address.
Okay.
First, the scope. The source clarifies that while it's designed for Mpelembe Network news, it is versatile enough for any web content.
So I'm not locked into their ecosystem. I can bring my own links from anywhere on the web. Good.
Correct. The process is simple. You find the input field at the top of the page, you provide the article, either a link or the text itself, and the automated processing begins.
Simple enough, but I did notice something in the source about recent analyses. It mentions the